Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Stress Podcast. I'm really excited, as always, to welcome our next podcast guest to the show, and it is Tashina King. Hi, Tashina. How are you today?
Hello, Julia. Good. Wonderful to be here.
Yes, I'm really excited to have a chat with you today in the podcast. And I always start the podcast with three really simple questions, which are, where are you located? What time zone are you in? And what have you been up to this morning? How do you start your day?
I am in Denver, Colorado. So I'm in Mountain Time Zone. It's about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I had a unique start to the day in the aspect of a friend is visiting from out of town from California. So my husband took our 3-year-old to school. He just started a week ago. And so I got to make breakfast and have coffee and breakfast with a girlfriend. So that was a unique way to start today.
Yeah, that's very nice. Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about you. What do you do? And what are you passionate about?
I, by label, am a confidence and mindset coach. And I work with people from all walks of life, all different backgrounds. So I am incredibly passionate about mindset and our internal belief structure that is held at the deepest part of ourselves at the subconscious level, and how those beliefs about ourselves, the world, and ourselves in the world, how that impacts our experiences in relationships, in our careers, finances, parenting, business owner. So however that shows up for a person, I'm most passionate about helping an individual really connect with their inner power, more or less, and their inner knowing, so that they can shift out of things that are holding them back, where they're feeling like they're meeting continuous roadblocks, so they can really step into their genius in whatever capacity they're wanting to step into that.
Amazing. And how did you get into that? How do you become a confidence and mindset coach?
When my journey started, I'm more full-time now mindset and confidence coach, but it originally began in my own professional dance career. So I traveled internationally for many years, and due to the pandemic and things, I haven't been, but teaching dance. So I was a part of a performing arts company for many years. Then I transitioned into a form of partner dancing called West Coast Swing. And it was during that time that dance became this doorway to having conversations with people about confidence, about their self-worth, their self-value, taking risks, exploring their creativity, sharing their ideas, whether that's with a partner or in a routine setting and you're competing it and you're putting your ideas out there for public display and even judgment, by a judge. And so dance has just been this incredible tool to connect with people. And it was through that chapter of my life where I was experiencing my own roadblocks and I was getting in my own way. And long story short, I wasn't able to excel competitively, which is what I needed to do in order to have an international career as an instructor, judge, and coach. And it all came back down to when I was 12 years old, a mentor telling me I would never amount to anything as a dancer. And so little did I know at that, 12-year-old girl had taken those words to heart at such a deep level that I believed that to be true. And no matter what I did leading up to that point, my reality was a reflection of that belief that I would never really amount to anything. So it's like I would get to this certain point of, success or doing well. And it was like a glass wall. I could see what was there right there in front of me, but I just couldn't break past it. And so I started to have conversations with my mom, actually, who at the time was doing clinical hypnotherapy and was also training in another modality called psychk, which works with subconscious beliefs just from a different angle than hypnotherapy does. And I really connected with the psychk approach to working with my internal belief. And it was literally at that point where I had that recall of that mentor telling me that I would never amount to anything as a dancer. And I was like, I don't want this belief. This is not serving me in my life. It's holding me back. And so the only thing I changed was working with my mindset and my internal beliefs about myself. And within about 2 months, I started making finals in the competitive aspect. And then within 3 years, I made it to the top level and I started placing. And then at that point, things just really started to rock and roll, more or less, because I had really gotten out of my own way from a mental, internal perspective. And I kept working with my mindset and kept working with my beliefs that as a woman, as a business owner, as a creative individual, putting ideas out there, that I was worthy of it. I deserved it. It was safe to put my ideas out there, and so many other aspects. But that was my journey into exploring the depth of how powerful our mind is. And from there, I started integrating that work with my dance students all over the world, and then working with other individuals, whether it's around fertility, pregnancy, childbirth, business owners, individuals in the corporate world, leadership. So it's been a really, really fascinating journey.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. How old were you when you kind of had that realization, something is holding me back from really stepping into my full potential?
I think it was at 22 years old,
Okay.
right? About 21, 22. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure I've definitely had people talk about hypnotherapy on the podcast, but psychk, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's again another way of approaching work at the subconscious level and changing the beliefs that are operating. So I like to explain the subconscious as a hard drive, and the hard drive will run whatever programs are installed on it. So if you think about your computer, you could have a program like Outlook or Microsoft Word, or something that allows you to be productive, or you could have something like a virus that gets installed on the hard drive. The hard drive doesn't judge what to run. It just runs whatever is on there. And our beliefs operate very similarly. So we could either have empowering beliefs that serve us in life and allow us to grow, adapt, change easily, whatever it may be, that serve us, or we can have limiting beliefs or disempowering beliefs. Things like, I'm not good enough, I can't do it. It's too scary to share my ideas. There's so many limiting beliefs, and the limiting beliefs are really just what you hear yourself say in those moments where you want to speak up. You want to go take a risk to do something, but then something stops you. It's that chatter that happens. Mm-hmm. And so our outward life, what's happening around us, the quality of our relationships, the quality of our career, our fulfillment level in that is really all a reflection of what beliefs are operating for you. And so psychk is an approach to shifting, changing, literally updating the hardware or the programs on the hard drive to disempowering beliefs, to a set of beliefs that the individual wants to rather have operate for themselves and in their life.
Mm-hmm. And how do you approach that with the psychk, I guess, modality? Because hypnotherapy is clear, right? With hypnotherapy, for example, you have a conversation, right, with your therapist, and then they hypnotize you. Is psychk, how do you approach it? Is it just talking with somebody through it, or do other things?
There's a very specific set of processes within the psychk approach that allows the individual to literally change the programming at the subconscious level within a session or within working with the facilitator of psychk. We use something called muscle testing or applied kinesiology as a way of communicating with the subconscious to understand what's happening at the subconscious level. Mm-hmm. What I really love about psychk, though, is that it's really geared towards whoever the individual is, whoever the client is. It's geared towards the client choosing what they want. And a lot of it is an eyes open experience. Mm. And so sometimes people are uncomfortable in hypnotherapy with the eyes being closed for the majority of the session. Mm-hmm. So it's an eyes open experience for most of it. And it's all about the individual knowing what they want and identifying what they want. They're in the driver's seat. They're the ones getting to create what it is they want to have happen in their life. So it's more of a do with process. As a facilitator, I'm there to help facilitate the processes, to ask questions, to really help the individual gain a real clear idea, identify what it is do they want instead in their life, so that they can then do that process. And there's been some beautiful studies with brain mapping where we do a process and we can see actually the new neural pathways that are created between the right and left hemisphere of the brain during these processes, which allows the brain to enter what's called a whole brain state, where both hemispheres are working cohesively with one another, which allows the individual to access so much more within themselves when we're working in cohesiveness, rather than one side of the brain being shut down or both sides of the brain being shut down to a goal or a topic that a person is working for towards in their life.
Wow. And as you had that experience when you were 12 years old, and then remembered that as you were, trying to identify what is holding you back in your 20s and your early 20s, how did you remember that experience? Like, do you remember it being super emotional? And, was it like a very strong, because I feel like sometimes, especially when experiences are painful or difficult, sometimes we don't even have really a strong recollection of feelings. And sometimes we do, right? I think it goes kind of in both ways.
Yeah. For me, it was a pretty emotional time in my life anyway. My parents had recently divorced. And so, two parents now separated, two different households. We were still trying to figure out who I spend time with on the weekends and the week. So there was already a lot of change. And then add on top of that, moving out of a studio that I had been at since I was 2.5 years old. So I was there for roughly 10 years of my life. So that was like a second home to me. And because we were moving geographically, it didn't make sense to go to that studio. And so I do remember it. I remember clearly sitting in the restaurant. My parents and I had just finished the conversation with the studio owner, which is the mentor. They both had gotten up to go to the restrooms before we left. And it was at that point, when my parents weren't there, that she got pretty close in my face with, her finger wagging, telling me I would never amount to anything as a dancer. And I remember feeling hurt. And I remember feeling like, God, like maybe she knows what she's talking about. She owns a dance studio. I've been with her since I was 2.5. But after that, like it hurt, I think for a few days or whatnot. But after that, I just didn't think about it. But I remember feeling in my training and my dance career after that, like I've got more in me, but I can't get it out of me. And then when I went to my performing arts company, I couldn't really land the roles that I wanted to and have the presence on the stage that I wanted to. And then when I transitioned into the West Coast swing realm of partner dancing, again, it felt like I know I've got the talent, I've got the skill set. My trainers at that point were dumbfounded as to why I couldn't even make a finals. And it was because my confidence on the dance floor was completely shut down. And I was so stuck in, which I think we'll talk about in a few minutes, just everything had to be perfect. Because if I was the perfect dancer, then I could succeed. But that perfectionism was shutting me down even more. It was blocking me from reaching that inner potential and that inner creativity and genius that really allowed me then, once I shifted from that, to step into that more fully.
Yeah. I would love to talk with you a little bit more about that, about the perfectionist mindset and about how, that is actually holding us back more than enables us to be successful, right? I was just thinking one more thing about your dance career. Oh yes, so you're 22 years old. You're having that realization. Super cool that your mom is doing hypnotherapy. I'm sure that helped a bunch as well. And so now all of a sudden you're having that realization. How I would love to understand, how did that really translate into your dancing and into how you all of a sudden maybe presented yourself differently?
Man, it showed up in so many ways. When it went to practicing and taking lessons and going to the studio to practice, I just felt in my whole body more relaxed. So the skill sets that my trainers were coaching me on started to integrate into muscle memory with a lot more ease. When I would go to compete, I wasn't so nervous because a lot of West Coast swing and the competition aspect is improvisational, where it's not a learned routine and you get a random partner. And in one of the styles of competition, you get a random partner 3 different times to 3 different songs.
Wow.
So sometimes you know the person, you've met them, sometimes you've never met them. And so for me, it was the ability to just connect to that person with more relaxation. So my muscles weren't near as tight. So with not being so tight and tense, again, I could execute the training that I had been practicing. I could connect to the other person as a person, not as this vehicle to get points to then, advance to the next level. So that allowed more creativity to flow between the partner and I, because so much of the dance style is improvisational. You have to create on the fly outside of a basic set of movements and patterns. When I would get moved up to the finals, a lot of it is done in what's called a spotlight, where it's just, again, a random partner, a random song, and you're dancing in front of the whole audience. So that allowed me to present more fully to the audience. It allowed me, again, to bring in the aspect of connecting with the person as a person and play off of one another and offer ideas within the dance, not just follow, but be an active participant in the dance as well. And so creatively, things started to flow better. I felt safer taking risks in the dance and trusting that it would all work out, even if I didn't know how it would work out.
Yeah, so cool. And so how do you think, did you let go of that perfectionist mindset? Like how were you able to make the shift from everything needs to be perfect and I need to do exactly how I expect myself to perform to I'm just going to be more open and more relaxed?
For me, there was a lot of layers, but I would say one of the biggest ones for me was wrapped up in this idea that being perfect equaled professional. And because I knew I wanted to have a professional career, which, I'm my own marketing, my dancing is how I market myself. I really had it so tightly bound in my head and in my heart that if I didn't execute the perfect technique, if I didn't have the perfect dance, if I didn't connect, visually with my partner perfectly, that I would come across as unprofessional, and then I wouldn't be hired and I wouldn't have a successful career. And so for me, a lot of it was shifting my belief or my perception, my view that it's okay to make mistakes. Mistakes are celebrated. I'm more than just my technique. My value is based on who I am and what I have to offer as a human being, as a teacher, as a coach, as a judge, not just on the physical display of a technique. So a lot of it was reclaiming or reconnecting or connecting even for the first time in some aspects that my worth was in here and who I was, not what I produced. And I see that a lot with clients, where in a society we are raised that what we produce defines our worth.
Yes.
So whether that's an award, a certificate, a certification,
a promotion,
a label at, our company, that tends to be where people find their worth. And when those things, like even COVID, when the pandemic hit, people lost their jobs or the work wasn't as readily available, things got rocky in the company, when those titles were more or less stripped, or whatever it was that they were claiming their self-worth in was no longer needed or taken away, didn't have as much importance, their self-worth really became disconnected. They didn't know who they were. And so for me, it was very similar. I viewed myself as a dancer my whole life since I was 2.5. And then when pandemic hit, dancer was taken away. Because I had worked on that already, I didn't feel like I was a nobody. Like I still knew, these are the qualities about myself that I love and I can use in a different aspect. And so that's one of the things I work on with a lot of people is breaking the perfectionist mindset, redefining where they find their worth and knowing it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to share an idea and not have it be perfect, but it's in that realm of the unknown and collaboration that magic can happen if you trust yourself enough to speak up. So advocating for yourself, believing in your ideas or your skill sets, whatever it might be. And it's really unique to every person. You know, it could be pressure that was placed on them in the home in their early childhood. It could be a perception of media, social media, what perfect looks like, the perfect job, the perfect title. And again, disconnecting from that disempowering perception of perfection and really claiming whatever it is they want to connect with internally.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. It resonates so deeply with me too. I think I talk a lot about this. I went to a speaking event a few weeks ago, and we were talking about mental health as well. And I was talking about how, you know, my self-worth was always attached to how my dad reacted to, you know, the grades I brought home and like his praise. And when he praised me and when he, you know, when he made me feel good, then I felt good, kind of a thing. And yeah, and then that kind of translated into, you know, the work, you know, like me being like super ambitious and super perfectionist in the sense of like, you know, I only felt valued or valuable when I got the next promotion or I got a really high performance rating. And I see this a lot, and I hear this all the time as well from the people that I work with, that their performance evaluations are so tightly attached to their self-worth, and how sad people are and how frustrated they get when it is not the way they expected it to be. Yep. So I think a lot of people actually have to learn how to kind of overcome that. And I loved what you were saying about the, you know, we only feel professional if it's perfect, or vice versa, right? We're only then we are only like worthy of whatever we think we can get, right? Yeah. When you work with people, how is that mix of identifying past experiences and just identifying what's maybe happening in their world right now? How do you approach like that work?
You kind of nailed it on the head. Okay. Just a few minutes ago when you said your dad placed a lot of importance on the grades, and then there was this conditioning that occurred that the grades is what mattered. And so what happens is really up until about the age of 7, we're in a brainwave state that's really impressionable. And I like to talk about it like a sponge. Whatever we see demonstrated to us, whatever we see on the news or the media, how our family talks about things or approaches things, that is the foundation. Though we are seeing in front of us the beliefs that we then absorb and bring into our own world. And so there's even studies with epigenetics that show even in the last trimester, when an infant is in the womb, there's even programming happening at that level with the mother's stress levels, her view of safety. You know, is there enough food? If you look at, you know, times where there were famines and things like that, people that were in utero, even at those stages, tend to have a different relationship to food than someone in utero when there wasn't a famine. So there's a lot of absorption at a subconscious level of programming about beliefs, how we live in the world, up until about the age of 7. And then at that point, the brainwave state kicks in where we start to have more discernment and judgment about the things happening. But at that point, we've absorbed so many beliefs already about ourselves in the world that we then start to live on and act on those beliefs. And then, of course, if there's a really stressful experience that occurs, a trauma that occurs, you know, that can really impact an individual at the subconscious level too. So in a lot of the work that I do, we look at, where do you want to be? What would you rather experience in life? And what was the earliest memory or stage in your life where you remember this being an issue? And for a lot of people, as silly as it may seem, a lot of it is there was so much importance on the grades. There was so much importance on getting an A+ or maintaining that 4.0 GPA, you know, that created a lot of pressure to be perfect and to maintain that level of perfection.
Yeah.
Or to live like a woman should live, or, you know, present herself in a masculine industry, you know, women's got to fight. So there's, again, it's so unique to each person and what they experienced growing up. So I look at, where do you want to be now and what beliefs would support that? And also working with where the original belief was planted, basically. And the way the subconscious works is the subconscious is always in the present moment. It doesn't have a past or a future. That's the conscious mind responsibility job. So what happened for an individual, say at 6 years old, when they went to their mom to say, Mom, look at this drawing I did. And even though the mom had no intention of cutting the kid off or being rude, she's on the phone. She's like, yeah, whatever. Like, I'll look at it in a minute. That kid at 6 years old could have taken that as, my ideas aren't important. I'm not, you know, worth somebody's time. You know, however a person, you know, experiences that original thing, it doesn't have to be this big dramatic trauma that happened. It could be something like that. But it was so impressionable at that stage because of the state the subconscious is in, that it then builds over time of, I'm not worth people's time. So maybe the person doesn't take the risk to get the job or the promotion because they don't think they've got something valuable to offer the company or the workplace. You know, so how it results as an adult can show up many different ways. But we want to look at what was the original memory that you can think of. And if you can't, that's okay. We can still work with where you want to be with the belief that I am valuable or whatever it is.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And, you know, I just want to clarify as well for listeners, because I think it's important that it wasn't actually my dad that put a lot of importance on the grades, but it was a way of how I was trying to get his attention. So it wasn't even, you know, like sometimes I feel like we make our parents responsible for certain things, but it was more like a reflection of how I wanted to be. Like, I don't know, it was already kind of in my mind ingrained of how, you know, how I wanted the love to be received from my dad. And it's interesting because, as I mentioned, like that talk that I did a few weeks ago, a lot of people actually came to me afterwards and were like, oh, I could totally relate to kind of like the daughter-father story. And I think just it's actually somewhat normal, you know, that there are just these kind of interesting relationships and connections with our parents where we are trying to get their attention. And that's kind of translates into how we are developing ourselves in the future. I have one last question. You were talking obviously about psychk and that there's like a whole process of how you're kind of working through these limiting beliefs. Can you maybe tell us one technique or one way of how once we have identified that belief, you let it go or you work with it or you transform it into something more empowering? Like, how does that really work?
And the individual that I'm working with will then choose what belief they would rather have be the case. So like, I am enough. I am worthy of fill in the blank. So the individual is choosing what their goal is. And then I can't necessarily share, it's a lot of like conscious mind, you know, curiosity that where we can get tripped up on the how. But again, we use muscle testing or applied kinesiology to see if it's happening and operating at a subconscious level. And if it's not, then we've got many tools in the tool belt of psychk that we can use to assist the individual in creating that whole brain state in relationship to the goal of I'm worthy of, or I am enough. It's safe to
and
take
what are these tools? Is it like meditation or like hypnosis or?
Again, so some of them, there's processes where the eyes are closed. Some of it, the eyes are open. There could be a unique way of working with the individual subconscious if it's closely tied to the person's goal, like someone who's working on writer's block or something like that. We might use something that would include writing as a way of moving through the change process at a subconscious level. So it's really, again, unique to the individual and what process. All of them, though, create that whole brain state where we can see between left and right the new neural pathways that are being created during that process, or what's called a balance.
Mm-hmm.
Belief change.
And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering now as well, how long does that process take? Like, is it dependent on the person, I'm sure? Like, what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it varies so much. The incredible thing is the belief that change takes a long time is just that. It's a belief. If you think about a sperm and an egg creating a baby, that change takes place, so quickly once the two meet. If you think about a car accident, one moment you're not impacting a car, the next moment you are impacting the car. Change actually happens very, very quickly. And so in a subconscious psychk process, I would say average most processes take between 3 to 5 minutes for an individual, depending upon how much resistance they may have internally to it, how much emotional trauma or stress there is associated to the particular goal. But at a subconscious level, the change takes place very, very quickly. And it's the physical, more conscious mind sometimes that needs the opportunity to integrate a little bit more. So another way of looking at it is when we're doing these change processes, the change happens, the new belief is created and formed. And then we look at action steps after, towards the end, at least how I work with clients towards the end of a session, of what are some action steps that you could take between now and when we meet again next that would just further integrate the use of this new highway that was laid in the brain. So it's not about removing the old highway. It's about laying the new highway down and then creating habits, action steps that reinforce the use of that highway. And, another thing that I was just thinking about as well is that we are oftentimes also tied as an identity to those beliefs, right? And I think that's probably where a lot of resistance then comes in, where people are like, but this is just the way I am, or this is who I am. And they are afraid of letting that go because they are afraid of the unknown, or they don't know what's going to come as a result of not being that person anymore, right? Exactly. Being willing to let go of what is known, even if it's uncomfortable, because we as humans will stay in the uncomfortable or the painful because we know it. We know what we can assume is going to occur. But when we take this opportunity to shift in a new direction, there is a lot of unknown. And that's one of the things I start first off with a new client is, what are your beliefs about change? What are your beliefs about trusting yourself in the unknown and opening to the unknown? Because if at a subconscious level, you don't allow change isn't safe, you're going to be undermining all the other work that follows. So I usually start with a new client in a few beliefs around change so that everything else we do is really supported and has a strong foundation.
And are you still working on changing some of your limiting beliefs?
All the time. That's the amazing thing is, I'll just relate it back to dance. Even though I compete and dance at a professional level and West Coast swing, there is always going to be more that I can learn in movement. There is, no matter how much you change in life, new situations are going to occur. Life's going to throw you those curveballs. There's always going to be an opportunity to learn and grow and become more of who you really are. And I think that's the incredible thing about being human is we have this opportunity to consistently grow and become more. And, one belief that I've worked on for myself is that change doesn't have to be hard, and my life lessons don't have to be hard. I can learn the life lesson when there's a tap on the shoulder. I don't have to get in a car accident to wake up and be like, oh my God, I need to change this, belief or this approach to life. And so I used the psychk processes when it came to my first son, when I was pregnant with him, that I trusted in my body. I trusted that I could have the childbirth that I wanted. If, something did happen where I needed to go into like an emergency C-section, that I would be able to adapt to that. So there was things like that. There's things constantly arising as a business owner, beliefs about money or beliefs about marketing, beliefs about putting myself out there, beliefs about connecting with a certain maybe group of people. So it's like I see something that has a little bit of resistance to it, doesn't seem to flow. And I go, okay, what am I here to learn? What do I need to shift? And when you're in a place of being open to seeing what lessons are available to you, and then you can change it and shift it. And I know it seems crazy to think it can be that quick. You know, for me in my dance career, changing the belief that I would amount to something as a dancer happened quickly here. And then I just had to show up, you know, so there's still the showing up part that we have to do as humans. And there's still work, you know, that we have to put in, but it makes the process a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. And what have you learned as a mother about the perfectionist mindset?
There's no such thing as a perfect mother. A lot of it is trusting my gut, trusting my instincts, and it's okay that my way is different than somebody else's way. And you know, having this understanding about mindset and the subconscious conditioning that takes place, it makes me really aware of what I'm demonstrating to my son. You know, in a few months, it'll be my two boys. And to not get down on myself if I make a mistake. Or if I do something and then in hindsight, I'm like, okay, I could have handled this differently, not beating myself up about it for a long time. It's like, okay, I could have handled that differently. You know, what do I need to do? Is it about being more patient? Is it about honoring my son's process? Because as a parent, a lot of times parents try to push their process on their kids, when in reality, the children, each child has their own way of doing things. And as a parent, if we can honor whatever it is the child wants to do in their way that supports them as a human and not project ourselves onto our kids, it makes things a lot easier. You know, so there's still times frequently where I'm like, oh, yep, I was pushing my way on him, or I was on my timeline, not his. Or how do we as a family find harmony between everyone's timelines or processes? Yeah. So not beating myself up or putting myself down for making a mistake or not doing it right has been a really big area for me to lean into in a very different way that it showed up in dancing or in my business.
Yeah, very interesting. Wonderful. Tashina, how can people best connect with you?
My website is empoweredtogreatness.com, and it's the number 2, not TO, so empoweredtogreatness.com. And I have a free gift for anyone who's interested in starting to work through the perfectionist mindset. And so that's empoweredtogreatness.com/perfection kit. And I'm on Instagram at Transform with Tashina and Facebook as well. So any one of those platforms you can connect with me at.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom with us today. It was really interesting to talk a little bit more about the perfectionist mindset and about where that comes from and how to break through limiting beliefs. So thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you, Julia. I really appreciate it.